What if Antarctica melted? Greetings, everyone. Welcome to our channel. Antarctica, too big to melt. A summer of extremes leaves sobering questions about the state of Earth's largest store of ice, capable of inundating coastlines worldwide as it melts. What happens in Antarctica affects us all, but does everyone know what's happening in Antarctica, let alone understand how events there could threaten communities around the world? Today, in this video, we are going to tell you about what will happen if Antarctica melted. Where did it all start? The first hint of Antarctica's warm summer came in September 2019, when the sea ice surrounding the continent finished the austral winter well below the historic average, continuing a 5-year trend. Below average sea ice in the Antarctic is not necessarily a direct factor of climate change. Some scientists attribute the decline over the past 5 years to natural variability, although questions remain about the additional influence of anthropogenic forces. But we do know that ice-free ocean waters absorb more heat during the long days of summer, and that the waters in the Antarctic Ocean have already been made warmer by greenhouse gas emissions. And as ice retreats each year, it can further intensify the effects of climate change, because it's no longer there to shield the water from the warming rays of the sun. Claire Parkinson, a NASA senior scientist who has studied polar climate systems for more than 4 decades, explains that sea ice is very reflective. As it retreats, the sun's radiation absorbs into the ocean, which helps warm the atmosphere. Warming in Antarctica. Nearly 2.4 billion people, or 40% of the world's population, live within 60 miles of the ocean. And so it's clearly not good that higher average temperatures are causing water in the ocean to expand. Hotter weather is also melting ice on land, increasing the volume of water in the ocean. Scientists are now paying particularly close attention to warming in Antarctica, home to 90% of our planet's ice. If it were all to melt, it would raise sea levels by 190 feet. Oceans have already risen more than 8 inches since 1880, and between 1992 and 2017, Antarctica lost 2.71 trillion metric tons of ice. This is roughly the volume of 3 Olympic-sized swimming pools every second. Half of these losses came in the last 5 years, a sign of an accelerating melt rate. We better get acquainted with the new ice-free Antarctica. Thankfully, a bunch of scientists just figured out exactly what that looks like. 99% of all freshwater ice on Earth is sitting on top of Greenland and Antarctica, and each year a little more of it melts into the ocean. Normally, it would take hundreds to thousands of years for it all to melt away. But what if something happened that caused a massive global melt overnight? As we slept, sea levels would rise by a whopping 66 meters. Coastal cities like New York, Shanghai, and London would drown in the apocalyptic mass flood, forcing up to 40% of the world's population out of their homes. While all this chaos ensues above ground, something equally sinister is happening below. All that rising salt water will infiltrate groundwater reserves farther inland, forcing its way into nearby freshwater aquifers. You know, the ones that supply our drinking water, irrigation systems, and power plant cooling systems. All those aquifers would be destroyed. Not good. On top of that, the ice on Greenland and Antarctica is made of freshwater, so when it melts, that's about 69% of the world's freshwater supply that's going straight into the oceans. This will wreak havoc on our ocean currents and weather patterns. Take the Gulf Stream, for example. It's a strong ocean current that brings warm air to northern Europe and relies on dense, salty water from the Arctic in order to function. But a flood of freshwater would dilute the current and could weaken or even stop it altogether. Without that warm air, temperatures in northern Europe would plummet, and that could spawn a mini ice age, according to some experts. Sea levels aren't the only mounting concern for melting ice. Nicholas Gollage, an associate professor at the Antarctic Research Center at Victoria University of Wellington in New Zealand, and the lead author of the second Nature paper, explained that a massive torrent of cold fresh water gushing into the ocean has major consequences that go beyond the world's coastlines. While we may think of weather as something that happens in the sky, the ocean plays a big role in how temperature and rainfall are distributed across the planet. El Niño, for instance, is a periodic warming pattern in the Pacific Ocean that can bring more rain to Peru and drought to Australia. Similarly, a phenomenon known as the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation shunts warm temperatures from the Gulf of Mexico to Europe. If you've ever wondered why Marseille, France, is at a higher latitude than New York City, but has a warmer climate, this is why. With the oceans, you are moving a lot of heat around the globe, said Gollage. Earth's oceans circulate along gradients of hot and cold, as well as salty and fresh. Gollage found that ice melt runoff from Antarctica, Greenland, and even inland glaciers like those in the Himalayas can throw off these circulation patterns. We are already seeing signs that the AMOC is slowing down, disrupting the Gulf Stream and fueling colder winters and hotter summers in the North Atlantic. Changing water temperatures and nutrient flows are also harming fisheries for important commercial species like cod. A further slowdown will likely lead to more extreme weather in Europe, and there could be a tipping point ahead where the AMOC abruptly shifts, leading to climate disruptions that will ripple across the planet, trapping more heat in some regions and bringing cold temperatures to others. A sluggish AMOC can also lead to higher regional sea levels in areas like the eastern United States. It can trigger other things as well. What's more, changes to the ice sheets in both Greenland and Antarctica could also trigger planet-wide shifts in temperature, ocean circulation, and many other parts of the climate system. The sea level estimates maybe aren't as bad as we thought, but the climate predictions are worse. So, what exactly will happen if all the ice melts? If all the ice covering Antarctica, Greenland, and in-mountain glaciers around the world were to melt, sea level would rise about 70 meters or 230 feet. The ocean would cover all the coastal cities, and land area would shrink significantly. But many cities, such as Denver, would survive. However, all the ice is not going to melt. The Antarctic ice cap, where most of the ice exists, has survived much warmer times. The concern is that portions of the Greenland and West Antarctic ice caps may disappear. We do not know how much or how quickly this could happen, because we do not know exactly how it will happen. That's because the ice doesn't just melt. Ice actually flows down valleys like rivers of water. The problem is that we do not completely understand the factors that control how rapidly the ice flows and thus enters the ocean. One way to approach the problem of not understanding the process is to study how sea level changed in the past. Earth is nearly as warm now as it was during the last interglacial period, about 125,000 years ago. At that time, sea level was 4 to 6 meters, or 13 to 20 feet, higher. It seems that this higher sea level was due to the melting Greenland and West Antarctic ice caps. Perhaps a similar sea level rise is our future. We don't know. We also don't know how rapidly sea level could rise. Will a 4-meter or 13-foot increase take 200, 500, or even 1,000 years? This is a question that a number of scientists are now trying to answer by studying how ice moves. Out of sight, out of mind. Antarctica is the world's remotest continent with a small and mostly seasonal human population, limited to scientists and occasional tourists visiting by cruise boat. Especially amid a global pandemic, events there may seem disconnected from our lives. Changes on the continent have far-reaching consequences for global sea level rise, changing ocean currents, and even on the pace of climate change itself. The news from the southern continent adds to the steady stream of warnings about the unfolding climate crisis. But while the current pandemic has sidelined climate concerns for many, it may also offer an opportunity to address the crisis. Some climate and renewable energy experts see it as an opportunity to speed the U.S. transition to cleaner energy and build resilience into coastal communities vulnerable to sea level rise. Whether that occurs will depend on a later debate, and perhaps also on how well the climate news coming out of remote Antarctica and other locations stays in the forefront of the public consciousness. Bottom line, have you ever had a chance to visit Antarctica? What is your perception about the time if all the ice melts in Antarctica? What do you think will happen? Let us know in the comments section below. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon to stay up to date for more interesting videos in the future.